We're working on the policy now or the child protection policy, which is always one of the most important things that we're aware of with our kids. So I'm going to review the highlights of the policy for meeting in small groups. Now I sent in the chat box, I put a link to the Padlet and it has all the documents on it. I sent you documents in your email and it also has these documents on it that we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm just going to review the highlights. I'm not going to read the entire policy to you, but you have to do that on your own. So please make sure you read it and then ask any questions to your faith formation department leader or get a hold of our department. If you have any questions, make sure you get them answered before you run into a situation you're not prepared for. So the policy that this covers is the students in faith formation grades 10 to 12. And then any ninth graders who've already had been confirmed and they want to be part of your small groups. Okay, so we specify them because the policy meeting also, whoops, lost my note. Because the policy also covers meeting off the parish grounds. And that is only allowed in these grades and these circumstances. So we have it in the religious ed policy, it says that you cannot meet in homes or private areas with your students. Well, we can in some limited times with the students in grades 10 through 12 and some ninth graders. So, but the first thing is always making sure that we have clearances. So all the people that are working with or having contact with these young people must have clearances on file in the parish before they meet with them. The policy and the diocese webpage have links to which clearances are needed. So if you go to the child protection website on the Diocese of Erie website, you'll be able to find it. I can send that link to everybody. I didn't grab it to pull in the chat box tonight, but if you need it, I can send that out to everybody in an email. So meetings should always be on parish grounds as often as possible. This is a parish activity. It's really an ecclesial thing or a parish thing that we want to meet together so that we get the kids used to being part of the parish, and they don't realize how much a part of the parish they are sometimes. So now you can meet occasionally in homes, you can meet around a bonfire, you can meet at the local coffee shop, but don't meet at Sally's house every week. We don't want you off campus every week or at the same house every week. And part of the reason we don't want you at the same house every week is that because we don't want the kids to know all the ins and outs of somebody's home. It's just, we don't want them to become too familiar with homes that they're meeting in, okay? Their home turf should be their church. So when you do meet in a home, preference should be given to meeting in a home of a participant instead of one of the adult group leaders if possible. So if Susie's mom wants to host a meeting in her house, great, that's a good thing. So one of the things we suggest, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but one of the things we suggest is that that you set your schedule for the whole year, if at all possible. You know that we're going to meet every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. So make your schedule. And then when you're setting your schedule for your small groups, you can say, well, on this week, we are going out to Panera to have dinner together and have discussions around the tables in there. Or we're going to have a bonfire at Joe's dad's house. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you for a minute because I want to show you the waiver that's going to cover this. So once I find Padlet. Oops, I'm on my Zoom instead of the Padlet. Here we go. There we go. Okay, now we have the Padlet up. Okay, if you haven't seen this before, please try and go to this website and check it out because it has all these forms that you need. So when you're meeting at these kids' houses or parents' houses or off-site, you have this waiver that everybody has to fill out. Anytime you go off parish grounds with the kids, you have to fill out this waiver. So I know it's a pain. So what we did, if you're gonna leave 10 meetings outside the parish, you don't want to have 10 waivers that they have to fill out. So what we did was we created this waiver and added this extra section at the bottom, where you can list all the meetings for the whole year and where you're going to meet on one waiver and have the parents sign off on it, so they don't have to fill out 10 waivers in the course of a year. Now, another idea is it's a good practice to keep a blank waiver with you for a person who just shows up unexpectedly. If, Joey shows up, mom's dropping him off, you can say, wait a minute, we don't have a waiver here, fill this out, so that you have something in your possession. It's really important to have those waivers. It protects you. It gives you information about the kids in case somebody sprains their ankle and you have to meet mom at the emergency room or for some reason like that. So one of the things also is when the kids do come off-site, there have to be 2 adults with clearances for every 8 student members of the group. Now, if you have male and female members in the group, we prefer that you have both genders, the male and a female leader. It's not an absolute requirement, but it's really suggested, and it's helpful to you, it's helpful to the kids. The kids are more comfortable sometimes with a leader of their own gender. So that's a preferred practice for us. If your kids are carpooling there's a policy on the website for driving students. It's on the Child Protection website again. And so whether they're driving in the carpool or arriving separately, there are no students allowed to enter into the home until 2 leaders arrive. So if you're a group leader, or if you're a leader explaining to your group leaders, ask them to arrive early, make plans to be there early so the kids aren't standing outside, especially if it's raining or snowing outside. We don't want that. So when you do meet in private homes, all the people in the home either have to have clearances or not be in contact with the kids. Now it's a difficult position because you're saying, this is your home, but you can't be in the meeting with us unless you have all your clearances on file in the parish. So the groups should also have a reasonable expectation of privacy. So if grandma's there, grandma's visiting from Arizona, okay? Grandma either has to have clearances or she has to be in a different part of the house. Or if you're lucky, maybe you can get her to take the little kids out to dinner instead. But she can't be in the room with the kids. So we also created a little handout that we call housekeeping, and that was emailed to you, and it's also on our Padlet. It's kind of some rules or tips for meeting in homes and off campus. You can share this with the people who are hosting meetings because it may seem like common sense to you, but there may be an item or two that a parent may not have thought of. Like they have their Tylenol sitting on the counter. You can't have that. I mean, to them, it's like it's an over-the-counter drug. It's not that big a deal. Technically it is. So it might be something they didn't think of. And when you give them this little tip sheet, they go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, I'll take care of that. So, I have to reiterate one more time that any person that's in contact with a student must have clearances on file at your parish. So that means if Joe's uncle is coming to small group that night because he's in town and he has clearances at his parish, that's not sufficient because he belongs to St. Joe's and you're having a meeting for the Our Lady of Peace kids. Joe's uncle's clearances have to be brought and given to the leader to have on file in the parish at Our Lady of Peace because they are hosting the meeting. They're responsible for that. So that's a really important item that you guys need to know. So I tried to do it real quick in a nutshell. So if anybody has questions, why don't you just give your hand a raise. I'm going to stop sharing my screen too. Questions about the policy? Okay, good. Well, if you think of questions, please email us. We're happy to help.
Mary, Could you talk a little bit about that? So you had that scheduled that they could schedule out for the whole year, so they would handle one permission slip. But if something changed, like, so for instance,
Oh, yes.
we're not gonna go here now all of a sudden because somebody got sick and they can't use that house. Could you kind of touch base what has to happen then with the change?
Right. I'm sorry about that. If you're supposed to meet at, Joey's house and Joey's mom's sick and now you can't have the meeting there because it's just not possible to have the meeting there. And you're gonna go someplace else besides the parish. Well, first of all, you have to let everybody know where you're going, whether you're at the parish or not. You have to tell every person where you're going, including the pastor and the faith formation leader. All the students have to be informed and all the students' parents have to be informed. If you're going back to the parish to hold the meeting there, you're covered. If you're going off campus though, you're gonna have to do an extra permission slip for these kids, a single one-off permission slip for the kids from their parents. So we're trying to avoid that by giving you that one with the table on the back that you fill out, but we know that sometimes things happen and plans change. So hopefully you know far ahead of time that you can't hold the meeting where you originally planned to have it and you have time to get the permission slips out to the kids. But if you don't, carry a stack with you.
Thanks, Mary.
And you said those forms are in the Padlet?
Pardon? Yes. Yeah. They are on the Padlet.
Juice, pickle.
I'm
Juice.
sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I think it was just background.
Okay,
There wasn't
I'm sorry,
a
yeah.
question.
I have one question. Is there a way we could make it a jot form or some kind of form on the computer that they fill out via the internet or Google form or something like that?
That's been posted quite frequently. There has to be some really very specific language in that if we do something on a jot form and have it in the computer. We found that it's actually a lot easier to have the paper forms. But was that Hannah who asked that question?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Hannah, let me, I can check with our lawyer, but he gave us some very specific language and it's gonna make the form even longer than it is, but it's also helpful to have a stack of forms in your hand and they're there for you. But the jot form, probably not.
Okay, thank you.
Jillian, I'm sorry, Jillian's gonna
No,
help
I
us
was
out
just
here.
gonna say, either way, whether it is online or paper, the people that are there with the minors that night need to have access to that information. So sometimes if it's an online form, right, maybe only the pastor and the DRE have access to those forms then, and you don't know if everybody has filled out a form. So just saying that, not to, again, not putting down online forms. It can be very useful, very accessible, but it's just another thing if you're thinking about going that route. If Mary hands out the language, it's about accessibility to that information too. And also, right, you don't want everybody to have accessibility to that type of information. So if you do a last minute change and then you don't have forms already in your hand, how are people going to access it is a question to think through in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian.
Mary, I have a question about partnered parishes.
Okay.
So if we have something at one parish grounds, right? And then we have students coming from another parish to the other parish, do we have to do that same permission slip for the visiting parish? Does that make sense?
No, they're part of your, when you are partnered parishes, that you're considered one.
Okay.
So you're like St. Teresa, St. Thomas.
Yep.
If you're at St. Teresa one week and St. Thomas the next week, you're safe that way.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good question, Missy, though. Good question.
Yeah, it was a good question.
Thanks.
Keeping us on our toes.
Mary, you're
Whoops.
muted.
Yeah, there I see. Okay, so if there's no more questions, then what I'm going to do is turn it over to Kate, I believe, right? Kate?
Yes.
That's right. So I get the dubious honor of helping you take all of this from the abstract and put it into some really concrete scenarios. Because what we didn't want to have is it all to make sense here, and then you go and you encounter situations and you're like, oh, wait a minute, like I didn't think about how to apply it here. So what we're going to do right now is just take maybe about 10 minutes and look at two scenarios. I'm going to pose a scenario, give you about 2 minutes to think about what your answer would be, and then we're going to share together and kind of get everybody's thinking, and then we'll go on to the next scenario. So the first scenario involves a permission slip. So I'm going to show you a permission slip, and I'm going to ask you to notice whatever you notice about the permission slip. Right now, we're specifically talking about child protection, but child protection is also all about kind of codifying common sense a little bit. So things you're going to want to notice, like how easy is it for people to kind of be aware of where you'll be? How easy is it for communication to be open? How easy is it for people to remember to come? Because you also want you to make this easy for your students. I'm getting into that phase of life now where I can't just keep a calendar in my head. I have to have things on paper. And the more you can make it consistent for me, the happier I am. So those are kinds of things to look at, plus the things that Mary was talking about with child protection and policies and what you know about those policies. So without further ado, Mary showed you that chart at the end of like, there was all kinds of verbiage. That's pretty common if you've worked in parish ministry before. But the second page, the page of all of the things, is what I'm going to show you right now. And your couple of minutes just to start noticing begins now. Should I make this bigger? No, it's okay. All right. All right. I'm going to keep this screen up here. I know it's a little bit awkward that we can't see everybody and see the screen at the same time, but why don't you, if there was something that you noticed right away, why don't you go ahead and share that now? Don't wait for me to call on you. I can't see you all. You're all good. Just hop in with what you notice.
Addresses?
Addresses. Thank you, Hannah. So they tell you where they're going, Teen Sally's house or small group leader's house or Perkins, but they don't have any addresses on there. So make sure you include the actual addresses on there. It's part of transparency. And it's just really helpful that nobody has any questions. What else do you know?
Last names, but you could have more than one Sally or more than one Joe or
Yep, you could include last names for sure. I put Teen Sally's house because I just made her up, but yeah, last name's helpful.
It looks like you're meeting at Joe's house quite a bit, and you said not to go to the same person's house. And he's also one of the leaders. So instead of going to a leader's, you should be trying to go to one of the teens' houses.
So is it right out to go to Joe's house? No, that he has a nice bonfire pit, like maybe give him once a semester or something, but he doesn't need to be in there 3 times from January to August.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this chart and saying, golly, could it be that easy? You can give a parents a list like this at the start of the year with more information on each one, but like, they just initial everything ahead of time for the whole year. Can that be done?
Yeah, then you're done. Now you have this page up here too, where
Yeah,
it
I know
has
we
all
have
the legal
those.
mumbo jumbo, but
Do they, okay, the thing on top is what I'm familiar with using.
mhm,
Could they just sign one of that big thing on top and then initial all these and that's it?
that's it.
Two
And
pieces
you
of
could do it for
paper?
the whole year. This is just one semester.
This is
Like what
okay,
Mary said-
one semester, but this is allowed to do it this way. But you know, better information as we were saying here. But you
Yeah.
you can do this. This would be like a life changer for me if I could give people something like this in advance of all these events.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
not
like
have
you
to-
definitely could do that, Daria. The
Wow.
one caveat I would say is, you can't use it for different ministries, if that makes sense. So this is all pertaining to small groups, right? All of these locations, all of these meetings. You couldn't
Right.
put them, say you had a youth minister at your parish, it's like, and then the youth, and then the Bible study night, that's totally a different ministry over here on that list, right? That's the only
Mhm.
caveat, but if it's the same
This is the same
ministry.
group of people going to all these things.
Correct.
Like
correct.
all my edge socials and stuff could be on this at the beginning of the year.
Yes.
That's enough. Whoa.
And I'm going to pause just 1 second because I'm going to show you where you can find it.
Okay.
I hope. So Mary keeps talking about the Padlet, which is phenomenal. So this is what it looks like. And the link is
Yeah.
in the chat of our meeting tonight. This is particularly for small groups is what it was designed for. So
Okay.
right here, small group meeting permission slip. This is the template.
Mhm. Yeah, I have that.
Pardon
Right.
me?
I've had this thing for years. That's what I use.
Yep. Well,
Um,
actually,
But I
it's
mean, for
two
different
pieces.
events. Okay, this is, wow, okay,
So it's right there for you.
I like it.
And when Jillian was talking about, it's important to have it on hand. We also talk about like medical emergencies. Like these help protect you legally, but they help protect your kids medically too.
Mhm.
So it has the name of their family physician and which hospital to take them to and who to notify if
Yeah.
something happens, right? So if you're not familiar with using these on the everyday, this is why we say that leaders should have something that they have easy, quick access to if they need it in the case of an emergency or a mini emergency, a
Right.
medical problem.
So presuming that the parent doesn't initial off on a date, then the child's not supposed to be there. So
That's
if they show up and the parent's already gone, I mean, you're calling them back. But even doing the photo likeness form, I'm constantly going back trying to get signatures, or initials in different places. So,
if they want to just, I'm going to say this out loud and then Mary and Steve are going to correct me, but I think that it's okay if they want to just sign right down that side. So it covers all of them. So they're not initialing like 15 times in a row. So that's helpful. But I would also encourage people, if they don't want their child to go somewhere, to like cross it off and write no next to it or something like that, just so it's really clear. If they're saying yes to everything and then there's one that they really would prefer not.
Kate
that
is
clear would be helpful.
probably technically right. You could sign down, but we really prefer that they initial each one because that means that they're saying that they've read each one that they're going to have their children at. So
Okay.
that's our preference. So, but technically and legally, you're probably okay the way Kate said.
There's good, better, and best, and we really go for best here. Okay, so any other noticings that you had, or do you need me to bring it back up onto the screen to just notice more?
Well, in our case, there's no parish, which parish is listed. We have we're two, so that wouldn't.
Yep, so name the parish and location of the parish. There was some consistency to the times and dates, which was helpful. And then there was one that listed like a holy day of obligation. And instead of trying to do a small group night meeting and the holy day of obligation mass that same week and having parents trying to go to two, they just moved small group from like a Tuesday to a Wednesday for that particular week so that it wasn't an extra thing for families. So just paying attention to those kinds of things as you're planning out, how can we make this doable? Your schedule is, I'm sure, full, but also how do we make this doable for families who are going to be running their kids around? Okay, are you ready? It is week 4 of the schedule that we listed. And someone mentioned Sally needs a last name. Well, Teen Sally, her mom has been getting clearances. She started a long time ago, but they are taking longer than anticipated to come through. And so Sally's mom is not a small group facilitator, but she does not have her clearances. What do you do? And who do you need to communicate with? There's not just one correct answer to this question. So I'm going to give you 1 or 2 seconds to think about it. I'm also going to type it and put it in the chat so you don't have to just remember. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to think, and then we'll share out what we are thinking about. All right, any brave takers? What would you do? This is your small group.
If possible, I'd move the venue to the parish.
Awesome. Okay, so Paul is on team moving. Paul, if you moved a parish, what would if you needed to move, what's your like thought process of the things that have to happen to make that move?
We'd have to notify the parish, make sure you have the availability of facility.
Awesome. Yep. And all of your teens will need notified along with their parents, the faith formation leader, and the pastor that you decided to change locations. Also, your permission slip that had you signed off to go to Teen Sally's house, now you need a new permission slip. Well, no, you're at the parish, right? You're at the parish, so you don't need a new permission
That's
slip.
why I chose the parish. I look for the path of least resistance.
Perfect.
They call me
So
like,
you're not going to Perkins.
You need a second leader then, because Sally's mom is not able to be that second leader.
Oh, Sally's mom isn't a scheduled facilitator, but
Okay.
good. That is excellent thinking. Yes. That is excellent thinking. So you do need 2 leaders still. So that's one way. If you wanted to go the route of like, hey, we're going to move, we're just going to be at the parish this time. That's great. There's another way.
Are you able to do it like you did with grandma, just not have Sally's mother present?
Yeah. So in this case, Sally's mom just needs to make sure that she does not have any contact with the students. So that would be like Sally's mom's upstairs and the meetings are going on downstairs. And it's weird because it's Sally's mom's house. I mean, it's her house and you're telling her like, I'm sorry. So in that case, I would take time to sit down with Sally's mom and be like, look, you did everything right. And this is really to protect you as much as it is to protect the students that we're working with. We don't want any questions. We don't want anybody to have any kind of misgivings. So we are going to ask you not to have any contact with that. And Sally's mom might enjoy a night out. Who knows? But also she might enjoy a night like pulling herself up in her bedroom and reading a good book and having a pizza. I don't know. But she is not with the small group downstairs. In that case, if that's what you did, you do not have to change your location. You don't have to change your permission slips. But Sally's mom wouldn't even be able to be the one to like open the door to let people in. Right. So Sally's mom is not having contact with teens, period, until she's cleared to do so. So any questions about that kind of course of action? Anything to add, faith formation team? Okay.
I've got a quick question. Since this is, I thought if a parent is there with their kid, like with driving, right? We could drive a kid if a parent of one of the kids is in the car. Is that whether or not they've got clearances? Isn't that right?
Home meetings are
But at
different
home, it's
from
different.
are different from anything else. So
Okay.
ordinarily we would say you can't meet in homes, but small group ministry is distinct and different. And so
Right.
specifically for small group ministry, there's a kind of policy exception that's policied. And part of that is that you need to be cleared. So the conditions are higher, they're more stringent in meeting in homes than other
Yes.
places. But Daria, that is a spot on question. Thank you for asking it.
I'd
The
like,
driving thing is still right, that I just stated before. Parents don't need clearances to drive as long as there's a person with clearances in the car, is the car
And their
policy.
child.
Right.
And
Yeah,
their
and their child. Yeah,
Need
yeah,
both. Yeah. Mhm.
right. Okay, okay.
I'd like to talk about clearances a bit.
Mhm.
I happen to be in a situation where I'm involved in 3 or 4 different groups and they each want clearances. So I have one group that I do the primary clearance with.
Mhm.
Then I make copies of the papers and submit them to the other groups, and they're all happy with that because they know that I've had the clearances. And if you do that I think in Pennsylvania, it's every 3 years, you have to renew it. So if you keep on top of it, then that kind of takes care of itself. So if you're, let's say you have a clearance, I'm sure you have a clearance, and then you get involved in another activity, they will probably accept the clearance that you already have for its duration. So that can be a time saver.
Sure can, yes.
When I get one, I get it renewed, get it approved. Then I send it to all the other organizations and say, here's my updated clearance.
Yes, and that is a good idea, Paul, especially and specifically what we should be talking about there is like the Pennsylvania state clearance, the criminal background clearance. But just to say too, that this would work perfectly if all of these were diocesan clearances, basically, because say you are a volunteer for your county's sport, youth, whatever. That doesn't mean that you've done the diocese specifically child protection training clearance. So there are clearances that the diocese requires and specific training that the diocese requires that necessarily someone who's just following Pennsylvania state clearances wouldn't require. So you got to make sure when you're going through when you're going through that list of the non-regular volunteer, there's just specific diocesan ones that are in there.
Each one and see, do you have a specific additional requirement?
Right, exactly.
That would be part of this process, of documenting the renewed clearance.
Right.
Yeah.
You might want to review the training or something. Reviewing the training is trivial compared to getting the clearance. Even the simple Pennsylvania clearances, it's still renewing the training. You hop on the machine and let her rip.
Yeah, and Jillian put go ahead, Paul.
I'm thinking having this basic paperwork, the basic 3-part Pennsylvania clearance, and then making sure that all the organizations you're involved with have a copy of that clearance. Then if they have additional requirements, like you say, the training, well, you just do the training. They'll say, well, we need you to do such and such training.
Yeah, and there are also actually some extra, some paperwork that has to be filed out for diocesan procedures. And Jillian put the link to the child protection for non-school volunteers in the chat box, so that you can click on that link and go to it and see exactly what you need to be working with children in the Diocese of Erie.
And
It's
how
really
long,
nice because it's a nice little list, and each piece on the list is hyperlinked. If you're not familiar, it's hyperlinked, and you can just go fill out the thing there, or it tells you how to do it. So if you're a checklist person, that's the way to go. Even if you're not, it's the way to go. Father Tom.
If we go back to this case and Sally's mom is not able to be there, does there need to be some adult from that home that's present there for that meeting? Besides the group leaders?
Technically, no, as long as you have two group leaders there.
Okay.
Would it be good practice? Like, that's just common sense. Good practice, yes, to have somebody who knows the home there. But it's not part of the policy.
I have a comment real quick, might be relevant, and I have to apologize. I have to duck out about 7:55 for another obligation, but I have that hard copy of that permission slip, and 4 of my candidates are going to a retreat down at St. Jude's. And because I had that, I was able to write at the top of it, St. Jude's, the date and the time for their parents. And to have that copy on hand it was very beneficial. I didn't have to go through anything for them to do that. So, yeah, I wanted to mention that. When I also mentioned, I had 10 of my 11 candidates show up, and I was curious. I said, if we were to meet once a month at El Amigos to eat, break bread together, and talk about Christianity and Jesus and our spirituality, who all would show up? And every one of their hands went up. But immediately I thought, I'm not footing the bill for that. So I'm not sure. There's going to have to be more practical ways to do this. And there's no longer going to be catechism at my parish. So, you know, I if I can write a letter to them to do small groups, I can include that permission slip for those that are under 18, which is a good idea. And then meet somewhere and maybe do like the ice cream bar or something a little bit cheaper. Because I think it might be more the food that's enticing them to want to come, because they're teenage boys. They want to play Fortnite and eat. So, yeah, but that was really nice to see all of their hands go up. It kind of gave me some hope, just so you guys know. Thank you.
Awesome. And then the other thing is, if it's okay occasionally to ask teens if they could like help maybe pay for their own food there. So like maybe you can pay for drinks, or you can pay for pie, and they can pay for whatever else they want. So if it is a strain for the family, they can have something, but also not you personally, like parish you can pay for, which I know is not a bottomless pit either. But we're not asking our small group leaders to suddenly become the financial gurus of their small group. Okay, so I'm sure that you will come up with questions as we keep going through. Feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to, there will be other times to ask questions as we go through the evening this evening. But I do want to just take a moment and pass it over to Danielle. She's going to talk a little bit about handling more sensitive situations that come up that aren't necessarily policy situations, and some that do impact policy. So Danielle.
Okay, thank you, Kate. So let me start our little presentation here. Here we go. As Kate said, I'm going to be talking through a couple of different areas that are a little bit more sensitive in terms of trying to address things. Some of the things are things we hope we never have to address, but we at least need to talk about them and know how to address them in the event that they do present themselves. First of all, we just want to say that like the best practice here is, that we're setting expectations and that we're setting a playing field of respecting privacy right from the very beginning. Through our small groups, we're going to be allowing our teens to process their faith and to think really deeply about some topics. And we're really trying to create small faith sharing groups, but it's important that we set some groundwork and some ground rules here at the beginning. We mentioned last week that one of the core values of this particular generation is authenticity. And we are encouraging you to be really honest and authentic in your small groups, which will in turn, hopefully, encourage the young people to become more vulnerable so that they feel comfortable sharing things that are really important to them. And from time to time, sensitive information might be shared. So we're just going to try to share some tips right now about handling these situations smoothly and tactfully and with the love of Jesus too. So one of the first things you're going to want to set as an expectation is the boundary of what is shared in small group stays within that small group. You're teaching those teens to respect each other and to respect the privacy of one another. And you might, have to give them some examples of how to do this well, because as we know, in this age where things can be shared so quickly and with so many people, especially on social media, teens don't always have a real good filter for what should be shared and what shouldn't be shared. And so this is going to be something that is an opportunity for you to teach them how to set appropriate boundaries. But another thing that we want to share is that, and this feels like common sense, but it's important to say it out loud anyway, is that as adults, you also need to be setting boundaries, or if you are going to be recruiting small group leaders, you need to encourage those small group leaders to set boundaries. And that might mean about the kinds of things that you'll share. You want to make sure that you're sharing things that are age appropriate and reflective of good values and church teaching. In our small groups, we are going to be doing, hopefully, a lot less talking and a lot more listening as adults. So you're going to be listening for these kids to share vulnerable things, to share important things to them. And one of the things that you want to make sure you let them know at the very beginning is that you are a trusted adult. You've entered into that circle of people that they can really trust. But you also want to let them know that just because you're a trusted adult doesn't mean you're going to keep secrets that are unhealthy or unsafe secrets. And so one way that you can say this pastorally to them is to say something like, you can trust me to listen. You can also trust me to do the best thing for you and for whatever situation I'm being presented with. Because you certainly don't want to say, hey, I promise not to ever share anything that you tell me in this group, especially if it's something that you do indeed have to share as a mandated reporter. So before I move on, just any questions about this particular slide? And I can't see everybody because I have a very narrow view. So if you just want to shout out your question if you have anything about this. Okay. Okay, I'll keep going. So secondly, we want to talk about some specific safety concerns. So you know that as a small group leader, really as a catechist, anytime that you're working with teens, if a teen shares about, and that should be teen singular, sorry about that. If a teen shares about the abuse of them or other minors, you as a mandated reporter are obliged to tell someone. That is a document that we sign each and every year. I don't know if it is something that you really take the time to read, but that language on that document says that if you learn anything about the abuse of a minor, suspected or known, that you are obliged to tell someone about that. Our diocese is very clear that we want to protect kids in 3 different ways. We protect kids by gathering clearances on adults. We protect kids by providing safe environment training. And what I'm referring to right now is this third piece, that we protect kids through compliance. So the fact that you've gotten all of your clearances, fantastic. The fact that you've done your safe environment training, wonderful. And that third piece is that the diocese trusts that if you find out something that you need to share, that you're actually going to do that. Well, how do you do that? As a mandated reporter, you are legally required to make a direct, immediate report of suspected or known abuse of a minor. I truly hope that this is never the case for you. But as we, start to tiptoe into these waters of small groups, it is inevitable that some of these concerns are going to come to light. And so we just really want to make you aware of them and make you ready to handle them. This is how you report suspected or known abuse, and it's on the website. Actually, the diocese has a very nice explanation of step-by-step what to do. So this really is just a review of what that information is. So please follow the instructions on the diocesan website. The first thing you do is you file a report. So that can either be online or you make a phone call to what is called Childline, and there's the 1-800 number. After you make that report, and really you just are providing whatever information you know, you're providing the names, you're providing whatever the child shared with you. You're not doing any investigating. You're just simply providing the information that you gathered. You're going to do that. And then you need to let the diocese know that you made that report. So there is a form, again, it is online, that's a diocesan form. You fill it out and you file it with the Office for the Protection of Children and Youth. All of you know Cindy Zemchek's name. You probably met her before. And she will keep that report. So she knows that a report was made in one of our parishes. And then finally, you have a responsibility to tell the person in charge. And that's either going to be the faith formation leader or the pastor, because they need to know that that's going on with one of the teens that's a part of your parish. A couple of things to remember. I mentioned this before, but I'm just going to mention it again. It's not your job to investigate. It's not your job to sit the kid down and say, okay, tell me all the details of this. If they have divulged something, you take that information and that's what you're reporting. You don't need to be calling anybody, meaning trying to investigate further. You simply are the reporter in this job, in this situation. Also, do not expect to hear what happened. After you make the report online or make the report to Childline, they're not going to call you back. So they're not going to let you know if they contacted the parents or if they contacted the family or anything like that. You may end up hearing what happened through the family, but that Childline is not going to be calling you back. Mary, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
No, I just want you to know, don't expect to hear back. Danielle and I had been talking about this. Don't expect to hear back because it's a privacy issue. And as much as you might want to know what happened, you're really doing the thing that you're supposed to do and then stepping out of the way to let everybody else do what they need to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. Okay, so you may have a situation where a student shared something with you, shared about the abuse. You did your job, you reported it. You also filled in the form, you sent it to Cindy Zemchek, then you reported it to your faith formation leader or your pastor. That student might come back to you and want to talk to you more about the situation. So you really want to make sure that you reinforce that you want to help them, but you might need to also then refer them to the appropriate next level of care, because whatever the situation is, they might need to speak with a counselor. You're not a counselor unless you are professionally a counselor. You are simply a caring adult who is trying to help these teens, but they might need to be referred to some professional services. You also might come across other mental health concerns that teens share that are not abuse, just, they're feeling depressed, or they might be talking about drama with their friends, or that you might feel like, if they're talking about wanting to hurt themselves or things like that. If those sorts of things come up, and I truly think these are more of the things that are going to be coming up in small groups, take some time to talk with the teen after the small group, of course, in an environment where you're still visible for other people. I mean, don't pull them aside into a room and close the door. Don't do that. But, try to learn a little bit more about how they're feeling, thank them for sharing, reinforce again that you want to be someone that they can trust, reassure them of your desire to help them. And at that point, you may need to reach out to their parents. You may need to reach out to the faith formation leader or the pastor again, because if this is a cry for help, you want to do whatever you can to help that teen, but you want to make sure that other people know about it as well. And this might include providing your local crisis services number to the families or to the kids. Another issue that is governed by our child protection policies is healthy communication. And we want to make sure that we're following good practices of communication. Our policies direct us how to do this between catechists and parents and youth. You want to choose a method that's going to be good for your community. So if that's email, wonderful. If that's a text thread where you're going to have all the parents and all the teens on it, great. If you want to use an app, I know at my parish, we use the Remind app, but there are other group apps that are free out there like Band or GroupMe. Those are all great things. The thing you want to avoid is you directly communicating with via text a teen. You can't have that. You have to have at least one other set of eyes on that text communication with the teen, so a teen and a parent. So like, for example, I know this is a small group training, but I'm one of the catechists for EDGE, and the kids were doing a scavenger hunt and they were taking pictures of themselves at different locations within the church. And I wanted to get those pictures so that we could put them in the bulletin. But I said to Jack, hey, Jack, why don't you text me and your mom together so that we both get the picture? And then I was able to, know that it wasn't just from him, it was to both of us. So that was okay. One of the things too that we're going to suggest, which we suggest to the EDGE groups, the EDGE catechists, as well as the Purpose catechists, is to communicate with parents about what was going on in your session that week. So we recommend sending just a quick summary of the topic that you discussed in your small group. Now, going back to what happens in small group stays in small group, you're not going to be writing a paragraph that says, well, Susie said this and Bobby said this, and you're going to just be sharing on a high level the topic that was discussed, if there were any concerns that came out of it, because parents want to know what's going on with their kids. So please, please consider making this a part of your routine of after a small group meeting, communicating with the parents about it. We parents appreciate frequent, timely communication, right? All right. So questions about, I know I shared a lot of different things in there. Are there any questions about that material? Or comments? I know my part was kind of heavy, but it's important too. And there was one time when I had to report, it was heart-wrenching, but the point of doing that is that that you are trying to protect those kids and you're doing the right thing. And so, you hope you never have to do it. But on the other end of it, sometimes something like that could really help a kid or a family and save them. So you just want to make sure that you know and are aware that you can go to the diocesan website in the event that something like that happens. Mary. Questions? No questions. Okay. Okay, I don't see any. Oh, Kathleen.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My question was, I haven't had to report anyone for a long time, but what's the prevailing, the current, I'm thinking about, do you tell the child, because these are older kids too, that you're reporting them, that you're not reporting them, but you're going to call Childline? Or do they think it's best not to tell the child that they're going to call Childline?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, or Jillian, our team. You have no responsibility to share with that child that you are going to report it, because anyone can report anonymously. I mean, if one of my kids, my own children, was talking about their friend who had shared with them that they were being abused, I mean, I can call Childline and just anonymously report that. So you do not have to say to the kid, now I'm going to call Childline. Like, you don't need to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any correction on that, team? I just want to make sure I'm speaking correctly. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yes,
after this meeting, where on that Padlet is the recording of this meeting for going back to review and things like that?
Oh, yeah.
When all 3 of the trainings are done, Sue, we will make them available online on the Padlet. So it'll be under the trainings or small groups or things on the Padlet. So, but we'll do it after all 3 of the trainings are done.
Perfect. Thank you. And if you're looking for like the written version of it, it's really long, but we all should be familiar with the child protection policy from the diocese anyway. And so it really is helpful to read through it. And so that might be like a stopgap, Sue, for you, as much as it's not as vernacular as maybe what we're doing right now. And if you have any questions for anybody, right, the faith formation team is always here for you. All of us are happy to help get you the answers that you need.
So annually, we have to do the safe environment training with the youth, and that's going to continue with small groups. Do you recommend bringing all the small groups together to do one training, or is that continue doing it as a small group thing?
Well, it would be easier for you to bring them all together and do one training. But that would be up to you, whether you want to do each small group do their own child protection training. But again, it'd be easier if you just brought them all together and did it all at once.
Make it a party. After they have to watch this stuff, then make it a party. Then, oh, we're having pizza now.
Taco bar.
Well,
I'm sure you all do this, right? But always communicate with parents before you're doing, right, that safe environment training. And sometimes parents forget that it's going on. So even you might have put it on the schedule at the beginning of the year, like this is when we're doing this. I know one time I had 6th and 7th graders and the parents forgot that I was doing safe environment training. I had to do it 3 weeks in Cleveland. There was a lot more you had to do. But there was a situation going on. And then it became a class discussion because they all knew, all the kids knew about it. Some of the parents did or didn't, but it would have been helpful for me. And then I was sitting there like not knowing anything, right? So it's always so helpful when parents and parish workers can be on the same team, because then you could curtail conversations or situations and be helpful in that process, right? So that's the ultimate goal, is for all of us in the situation that us and families are on the same team, right? And we're making sure that all children are safe together.
Okay, if there are not any other questions about my particular section, I'm going to boot it over to Jillian to do a scenario for us.
Yes, so you can all breathe. This is the last portion. We're going to do 2 scenarios and then we can have our evening, okay? So if that doesn't excite you and perk your ears, I don't know what will, besides, I don't know, the lottery. I don't know. Jesus is back. That might be great for everybody here. But I am putting in the chat right now, the first situation. So you are halfway through your year and your small group is on fire. Of course, right? And they're sharing authentically and they're truly invested in one another. 1 week, a teen shares a significant mental health concern. How do you handle the situation in the moment? And how would you follow up after the session? Not everybody at once. I'm very overwhelmed. Very overwhelmed. So again, right, part of this situation would depend, like, is this person sharing something where they're an immediate risk to themselves, right? Saying, I'm depressed, and saying, right, I've had suicidal ideations and I've had a plan and X, Y, and Z, right? Those are different scenarios and require more immediate action versus not. So one, you have to be really attuned to what's the level of harm that could be done to self or others in the situation. And when it's mental health, right, that's different than child protection necessarily. So you would always want to, again, have those those crisis numbers on hand. I would always use one of those that evening, even just to verify. Even if you think like, should I or shouldn't I or whatnot? Maybe it was something like, yes, the kid said I'm depressed. It's like, well, should I, is that something that I really have to share, you know, with a parent or whatnot? Always call the crisis number. And if there's something where, again, you are halfway through this year, this isn't the kid's week 1. You should know this kid by now. You should have a kind of just a gauge of, oh, like, is that how they are normally and whatnot? And then also it's always good to loop in the parent. You know what I mean? Just loop in the parent if it's something where it's like a mental health concern, and maybe, you know, the follow-up was, oh yes, I have a, you know, the kid's like, I'm depressed, but I go to therapy every week, and like part of their story is that they're getting help already, right? And you might just reach out to the parent and be like, hey, they're just being really vocal about this, you know what I mean? And just letting you know that was shared or whatnot. But there is, when we're very much at concern about someone's again, safety, we always have to act. So scenario 1, are there any questions with that one?
If someone was to share that openly about help, and it's like, would you loop other parents in so that it's like, well, my kid comes home and tells me that so and so in their class is like sharing all that mental health stuff. It's and it's like what my kid's hearing in these small groups. Now I have a concern. Or do you
So
share
yes, no, I understand what you're saying.
in a
as-
general form, you don't say who the child is or anything, but you share
Exactly, Irene. Yeah, you would summarize in that meeting, hey, like we were discussing this topic, and people were just sharing very vulnerably how they've dealt with things, which was I mean, you could sometimes even just say the range was this to this, right? So you're even saying what it was, but again, not who it was. So again, it's a great idea to have a conversation with your child about, you know, appropriate, if it's coping tools, or, you know, if someone's talking about, oh, like, oh, emotions, like how, right, we come down from aggression or things like that, right? Just those pieces that you do share, but like you pointed out, Irene, you don't necessarily put the person's name. I would have an individual email to said parent of someone I was concerned with, right? Not group emailing, looping in all parents into this particular person or whatnot. And at the end of one of those nights, it also might be a good idea or a heads up that you know that this is a situation where you don't want your kids going back to school or whatever the thing is the next day and be like, ooh, because like, right, the juice, sometimes it's unfortunate, but like the juicier the topic or the more severe the response, maybe people are tempted to share, and it's always a good idea to remind the students too that like, hey, we're in this together, you know, and so when heavy things come up, right, that what happens in small group stays in small group is important. So
Also, we're in the environment that we keep hearing, if you see something, say something, or if you hear something, say something. So like Irene, what you're talking about, and it's very important that, you know, the kids might come home and say, you know, Johnny talked about killing himself tonight. That would be something that, you know, we would want to help all of those kids kind of process and things. So we encourage them to say something. So just to give the parents a head up that, yep, this topic came up tonight. And if your child is experiencing some distress over it, you know, if they want to talk or something, even offer to the pastor or faith formation leader, just to make them aware that this situation happened, because we are encouraging more and more, if you see something, say something, don't stay quiet, because that's when something bad happens. Usually is when we don't say something and people have noticed things.
So in the moment, is it better to redirect or better to handle it right there in front of everyone?
I think it would really depend on what actually is happening. Like if somebody, as Jillian said, you have to kind of assess, what is the safety of everybody? So the safety of the person, the safety of the group, the safety of maybe somebody else. So if there was a real threat, you would want to handle it immediately. if there were, if it was more of a, you know, the person was talking about depression, things like that, you might want to redirect and then address it later, privately. So really, it goes to the situation.
I think what we also need to do too is, if you see that you have a vulnerable child, maybe an email might not be the right thing. You probably need to pick up the phone and talk to the parent, because time could be of the essence. But a general email to all of the parents is okay. Like, this was a heavy class, or this was a heavy group meeting, and this is what we kind of talked about. You don't even have to say that someone was struggling. It just put that out there. But for the student that you are worried about, I really feel you may need to go to the crisis number, but you at least have to call the parent and speak to the parent, in my opinion.
Thank you for clarifying that 100%. Yeah, especially again, if we're talking about something where we're fearful of someone being an immediate harm to themselves or others. 100%, absolutely. I mean, the ideal situation of that is parent picks kid up, and you might just be like, oh, hey, can we, like, you adult to adult, talk a second? You know what I mean? If it's that level, because if that kid needs to go to the hospital, like, we want to make sure that happens, you know what I mean? And we want to be doing the next right thing for everybody involved. So, all right, I'm going to throw out the next scenario.
Just one quick thing just said. Thanks, Tim. You mentioned like redirecting. We do have a page of back pocket phrases. So if it's not necessarily your first skill to redirect in a way that doesn't sound like you stop talking because we're going to change the subject now, we might pull that out and throw it on the Padlet. So look for that. And it has just some smooth ways to make everybody feel valued, but also to direct the conversation where it needs to go. Thanks, Jillian. Sorry.
Oh my goodness, how dare you? So last scenario that was just put in there. It's a new small group. You're on week 3. Your small group teens help plan the activities and they commit to the dates, but only one person shows up. What questions do you ask yourself? What do you do? You know? So it's 2 adults and 1 teenager.
Not a good situation.
Ding, 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 Tim.
Cancel.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Yep. That's the short and sweet of it, is you have to cancel, right? Because that is not an appropriate environment for the adults or for the teen, right? So if you have 1 teen show up, you would cancel that evening, have their parents come pick them up. And then, right, you might want to email the parents and say, hey, this is what happened. Set out a communication. If you can't be there ahead of time, please let us know so we can avoid the situation in the future. And or if this date and time really doesn't work, please let us know and we'll try to readjust, so that we can meet everybody's needs as much as we can, right? So that's the short and sweet of that one. But yes, never 1 teen, not so much. No. So also, and I just experienced this past week, and this might be a situation where maybe there's multiple small groups in a parish and you all are getting out at the same time or whatnot. But I just had a meeting like this the other day where I had some minors and some adults leaving at one time, and all the adults just wanted to get in their car and go. And then I look over and there's 1 teen and me, and I run down the hall to make sure there's another adult in the building. And I find them and I say, you stand here with me. You know what I mean? Because this kid, their parents were, just behind everybody else. But that's the thing where it's like, I also want to make sure I was safe and it was not just me and said teenage boy over here. Right. And so you make sure, hey, you stand right here, please don't go anywhere. I'm going to go look for someone else. Right. And make sure that not only he is safe, right, but you are safe too. So adults, we all have to look out for each other at the end of the day. That's part of it too. Right. So. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. And you might have a question that comes up later. Again, feel free to reach out for us. We're always here. And I'm gonna pass it off to Deacon Steve.
Thank you, Jillian. So we're at the end of our time, and just want to make sure there are there any questions before we do our closing blessing? And I don't know why it's not going off speaker view of you, Jillian, but you're still stuck there.
Could you review what we just give us a brief plan of what next week is? Because that's the final week, if I understand my schedule right.
Yes, it is the final week. And we're going to do basically for next week, it's going to be general rules of thumb, how to planning out your schedules, your meetings, things like that, getting your semester started, the types of formation. So remember last week we talked about the 4 different types of formation, human, intellectual, spiritual, and pastoral. So we'll be going over more in depth all the other 3 as opposed to human. Anything else I'm missing, team?
The big thing to know is if you come, you should leave with 10 meetings kind of thought out. So that would be like 3 to 4 months of your session. So like now you're going to have to tweak it when you get into real life, but it's supposed to be a practical thing as much as it is an informational thing.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Let's pray us out. Oh, Jen, you have a question?
So I know you said you're not going to post the videos until it's all over, but is there any way I can see the video from last week before next week, since I was so sick last week I couldn't even.
Yeah. How much money do you have?
What do you need, Steve?
Hey, we're coming there tomorrow. I'll give it to you tomorrow if on the computer.
Oh, okay.
I can send you a link, Jen,
Okay.
if that's
Mary,
easier.
Yeah,
I
it sounds
wanted her
like,
to work more.
well, just because it sounds like they're connected, I want to make sure I'm.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind getting that too, because I also missed the last time.
Okay, Daria, how much money do you have?
Good wooden nickel, maybe. Yeah.
I know, that's what I know.
They work for the
We're all
church,
in the
Steve.
same boat. We're all working in the church. Yep.
They work for the church, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I would also appreciate it.
Who was that?
Barb, was that Barb?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
And I'm broke.
Treasures in heaven, everybody. Come on, treasures in heaven.
maybe we could just then post it. If everybody needs it, we could probably just post
Or we
it.
could email it out before, if you want to hold off on the Padlet for a hot minute.
Yeah.
We could email it to everybody registered.
Yep. All right. Good idea. Okay, so let's just take a minute to bring ourselves here. So God, we thank you for this time this evening. I just thank you for each person's heart here, and their heart for our young people and their desire to bring young people closer to you. We know that some of the topics this evening were heavy and not fun topics when we're talking about abuse and mental health, but we just know that we have good intentions for all our young people. We have their well-being in our hearts and in our minds. We ask that you bless each one of our young people in our diocese and to help us to see where we can support, guide, and lead, but also that we pray that they are healthy individuals and are growing closer to you. So as we journey home tonight, we just ask your safe blessings on those who have to travel, but also a nice, safe, restful evening. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, Paul.